What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of The Real Breakdown. I'm Roger, here again with my buddy Edgar. Today, we're going to be talking about Spider-Man No Way Home, a pre-release discussion. So some of the things we are going to be talking about, guys, is the hype that this movie has had, the rumors that are surrounding this film, the impact on the MCU, some trilogy comparisons, what we think about them, and what this movie could add to that, and then some of the expectations we might have. So we won't be talking spoilers because obviously this movie hasn't come out yet. But if you don't want to hear anything about leaks or you don't want to hear anything about theories, then you might want to wait until after the movie comes out for this because we are going to be talking about some of those things. So with all that said, let's just jump right into it and give you the real breakdown. So Edgar, man, this movie, it's less than a week. Next week it's coming out.
Honestly, that's crazy for me to process because I feel like we've been talking about this for so long. I feel like it's a new Endgame or Infinity War, right? Like you talk about it like it's coming, and now it's like, oh, it's right there.
Yeah, dude, it's crazy, man. So one of the first things we're gonna be talking about, man, is the hype. The hype for this movie has been insane. Like you said, it's kind of like that Endgame, Infinity War type of hype. Did you expect something like that for this film?
No. Well, it's going back like no, when it was just the Spider-Man on the run, his identity's exposed, like when that was all we knew. No, but once there started being rumors of multiverse and other characters coming back, I started to expect a little more hype. But even to the level that it's at, I don't think anybody could have expected this. Like this, like we've said, this is like the new Endgame right now.
Yeah, and I think one of the crazy things too, there's a lot of hype around this movie. It's the third Tom Holland Spider-Man movie. It is in the MCU, right? Is Spider-Man is kind of everywhere right now, man. From the movies, from the video games, from the animated films too, right? Into the across the Spider-Verse, right? We got a trailer for that a few days ago, maybe a week ago or so. I mean, Spider-Man is hot right now. I mean, we've always known that character, brings a lot to the table when it comes to fans loving him and just the rich mythology with his villains and like just what an amazing character Spider-Man is, right? Up there with the Supermans and the Batmans of like everyone knows who Spider-Man is, right? So, yeah, I mean, honestly, I mean, like, even just this week, right? Like I just mentioned, we got that new trailer for the animated Miles Morales Spider-Man movie. Obviously, we have the, right behind you, the Spider-Man, the Miles Morales video game, right? We also had a few months ago the Spider-Man 2 trailer came out. It was teased and was announced. So, a lot of hype, man. What are your thoughts on this, man? How do you feel about this character?
It's crazy because Spider-Man was kind of my first love when it comes to like superheroes, and so he's always been number one for me. And going back to it's crazy, it wasn't even that long ago. Going back to 2014, Amazing Spider-Man 2 had just come out. Back then, if you were to tell somebody, oh, in just 6 years, we're gonna have all this Spider-Man, like MCU Spider-Man, like you're saying, animated Spider-Man, never would have imagined it, and it's crazy. So I'm loving it because I love the character. I love Miles. I love just all the different aspects of it. So I for one love it. This is my prime era right now. How do you feel about it?
Dude, I'm very excited for it. Like, playing the games and, the Spider-Man PS4 was amazing. What a great storyline. Then we get Miles Morales in the next game. And then now we're getting, we got Into the Spider-Verse, which was a phenomenal film, which I will admit going into it, I was like, this looks dumb. I don't know if I want to see this. Those first few trailer drop, I'm like, okay. And I'll be honest, man, I was one of those guys that at first I'm like, Peter Parker's my Spider-Man. Who's this Miles Morales guy? And I'm Hispanic, right? And Miles is Hispanic too, but I'm like, no, Peter Parker's the OG. You watch that movie and you just love him. You play this game and you just love him. So I like that I'm getting different, like, I like that they're enriching the mythology by telling different versions of Spider-Man, right? We have Tom Holland, which is different than the Miles Morales in Spider-Verse, which is different than the Miles Morales in the game, which is different than the Spider-Man Peter Parker in the game. Like, that's a Spider-Man that's been around for 8 years. And then in Tom Holland, we got a different Spider-Man that's in the MCU with Iron Man, with Doctor Strange, with, so we're just getting, I love that they're covering different bases, right? It's not like the same old story over and over, right? They didn't show Uncle Ben die again and him getting his powers, but we are going to get that now in an animated form on Disney Plus. So I like what they're doing. and so I'm very excited for it because just like you, man, I grew up on those Tobey Maguire like Spider-Man movies as a kid, those video games, and so I'm very excited with what they're doing. I do hope that they don't like spread them out too thin, but that's something we'll talk about in a little bit. But yeah, man, what a time for Spider-Man right now, and just like that character. So with that said, obviously we're going to be focusing on the No Way Home pre-release, which as of right now is it's coming out next week. So the trailers, man, some of these trailers that come out, obviously the first trailer, they showed us Doc Ock, right? They showed us the Green Goblin bomb. Recently, the second trailer came out. Some people are speculating that there might be one more final trailer a few days before. Obviously, there's TV spots coming out. What have been your thoughts on these trailers that have been coming out and kind of, maybe not breaking the internet, but breaking some viewing records?
I love both of the trailers. They both are done very well, especially like that second one was crazy.
All the theories. I mean, that's hype,
all the analysis, like the second by second breakdowns. I love what it's doing. And just the fact that like Sony literally hosted like a launch party for a trailer, like, and the fact that everybody was like counting down for this thing, it just goes to show you like we've been saying, how much hype there is for this movie, like how much people are like trying to get any second of footage that they can. It's the marketing's been crazy though, because if you think about it, like both trailers were released pretty late in the game. The official trailer just came out like a month ago, not that long ago, and the movie comes out like we've said like in just under a week. So it's been an interesting ride for sure.
Yeah, man, I have to say, man, the reason I decided to bring up the trailers here, man, is I don't know if I have seen a trailer be so analyzed and be so broken down and be so like so many theories revolving around one trailer since Endgame or since Infinity War. And even then I feel like people weren't breaking it down or creating as many theories as there were then, because we kind of had an idea of what well, it's either going to involve time travel or whatever, right? So but with this, oh my god, the amount of, I mean, I just saw like people, like the lizard getting punched, like, or what is that? Or like, oh, it looks like right here someone got digitally removed, and and so all this like theorizing and all this hype, and I was shocked at like how much attention the trailer got. I mean, I'm happy about it, right? Like I want this movie to succeed, and I want these characters, on the big screen to get attention. So we'll see, man. It gets me more hyped for the movie. It really does. Because I don't know if I would definitely say that like the trailers have brought my excitement up, like for the movie. Not that I wasn't already excited to see it, but like it definitely made me more excited, and that's what a trailer is supposed to do. So I definitely think that they were good and that they did the job, because I was very curious to see where they were going to go after the end of Far From Home. And I'm glad that one of the first trailers kind of picked right up from there with MJ and his identity and stuff. So yeah, man. So speaking of that, about overanalyzing trailers, leaks. There's been so many leaks for supposed leaks for this movie. I know that you love to look into that a lot more than I do, right? I like to go in a little more pure to the movie. But even for me, man, it's just there's so many rumors and so many things that like, it's inevitable. Mm-hmm. So what are some of the things that you have seen? And like, like what are some of the leaks that stand out to you about this movie?
So I'm going to try and tone it down for the video, because I have seen a lot.
Yeah.
So I mean, let's just get it right out of the way. The one that everybody's talking about, Toby and Andrew. Mm-hmm. It's crazy because there's actually this divide in the fans right now. There are some that are like, they would have put them in trailers. They would have been, using them in the marketing. Yeah. There's no way they could be in it. Then there's other fans that are like, but there's all this evidence. And so to me, there's too much evidence out there that they're going to be in it. Like, I won't lie. There's a part of me that despite all I've seen is like, why aren't they in a trailer? Like, they're not in the movie, are they?
Yeah.
But like between, photo leaks, Andrew caught in 4K, like just, different, like leakers going on Reddit and then describing scenes that end up in the trailers. to me, there's too much out there that adds up that they're in it, and too many instances of like, something accidentally leaking, and then the company being like, oh, that was just that's a with Andrew. Oh, he in one interview he's like, oh, that's a Photoshop. Like, how many times can you use that excuse? Like, how many times is it that was a mistake, that's old or whatever. So to me, I'm fairly confident in saying they're in it based on everything I've seen. And so that's the big one, and also the other big one that everybody's been talking about, Daredevil. From what I've seen, I'm pretty confident he's in it. Who knows? Maybe in a week we'll be filming this and I'll be like, they weren't in it. But based on everything I've seen, I'm feeling confident they're in it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, for me, man, like, I wanted you to speak about the leaks because, like I said, I haven't seen them. I've tried to avoid them.
Yeah.
But you hear things, right? Yeah. You see comments, and you hear things, you see comments. And for me, I'm gonna speak about it on a broader, like, kind of take a step back perspective. Once again, I feel like I have never heard of this many leaks for this movie. Like Andrew Garfield has denied so much, more than I have ever seen an actor deny for other movies. And I mean, this is not even an Avengers movie, I mean, it has the potential of that kind of hype. I mean, we're seeing it, but like, the leaks have just been crazy, from Toby and Andrew, to Daredevil, Venom as well, right? With the end of, Venom and Carnage, the sequel. I don't even care about the name. It doesn't even matter, right? So let's talk about Daredevil a little bit more, because that was one of the earlier rumors that came out, right? Remember the trailer and like, oh, it's like the white shirt with the black tie, but then the IMAX trailer showed the face and it wasn't him. Yeah. So Charlie Cox's Daredevil was one of the earlier rumors that came out, and then it kind of died down a bit. But I heard that there might have been some leaks on Daredevil. I don't know, so I'll let you speak on that.
Your boy leaked it.
So you have to. I still haven't seen him, so I'll let you educate me on that in a moment. But Hawkeye and some of the episodes, and Uncle, and Vincent D'Onofrio, and that to me, and some of the comments by Kevin Feige recently, has led me to believe that I am much more confident now that Daredevil could potentially appear. Charlie Cox's Daredevil could appear. In Spider-Man. I mean, let's talk about what Kevin Feige said. Okay. He basically came out and said,
if you were to see Daredevil in a project, it would be Charlie Cox when that happens, where that happens.
Yes. Yeah, so he said that when Daredevil would appear in the MCU, it would be played by Charlie Cox. But when would that happen? He wouldn't know. First of all, like, if you're saying that, like,
he doesn't talk like that.
Yeah. Like, why would you cast someone without having an idea of where you might use them? Like, so that to me was like, okay, this Daredevil rumor that like kind of faded for a little bit, like just put it right back up on my list, and I might feel more confident about that than Toby and Andrew. Yeah. But I haven't seen all the leaks, so like you might feel differently about it. But yeah, I wanted to make sure that we got that in there, because that's something that happened like about a week ago or so, or within the last week
during the press run.
Yeah, so I thought that was very interesting. What do you have to say on the topic?
I'm fairly confident Daredevil's in it, based on what I've seen. I mean, we've had some, pretty solid leakers that have said this is how the scene is going to play out. This is what's going to happen. And there was we brought this up for a moment there, but there was an image leak, probably, what was that, like a month ago or something like that?
The John Campbell leak?
Yeah.
I think it was a month ago. I don't
know. And with that image. So I know you said you didn't see it. It's in.
I don't want to know about the scene, but you can tell me what the image was.
So Charlie. So Daredevil is in the image, along some. I guess I'll try and say this like not super spoilery, but along some of the characters from the film, in a setting where if you play the trailer, you can see that setting.
Makes sense.
Like, and it's not like it's like they literally took the trailer image and like Photoshop somebody in. It's like a different angle of a setting that
of a set that you might be able to see in the trailer.
So
okay.
I would say that image is real, and then also I don't know because you follow John Campea.
Yeah.
I know I watched his video where he kind of did his explanation of what happened. I don't know if you watched that one. You know, he mentioned how he was reached out to by Sony, and they said, oh, we don't think, that you intentionally did this, or, you wouldn't have. I don't remember exactly how he worded it, but like, you wouldn't put your watermark
on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To me, that story confirmed that it was real. Because why would Sony?
He was tiptoeing.
Yeah.
He was trying to tiptoe, but he kind of didn't. So yeah.
Because like, why? There's fake images everywhere. Sony's not calling up every fake image.
Yeah.
And obviously John Campea, he's big within this community.
He knows people.
So I think to me that conversation solidified it was a real image.
Okay.
And then you add that along with Feige's comments, and today actually I watched a video a little bit earlier before I got here where as I'm sure you heard, the press saw about 38 minutes of the movie. And in one of the interviews I saw, I'll try to tiptoe around it for you, but the interviewer said there was one scene that that made me like freak out inside, that as a fan.
Yeah.
And he's he was talking to Tom, and he's like, how did that come to be? And Tom said, was it the scene in this setting, which adds up with the photo that John Campea leaked? Yeah. And the guy said, yes, that scene. Yeah. And then Tom kind of got into, that was an interesting one because that was, that was kind of when everything was up in the air. We didn't know who was in, who was out. So it adds up with
dude, there should be like a freaking behind the scenes movie, making of movie, in 10 years about this, because it's just been crazy, man. I appreciate you tiptoeing around it, for me. Like, I kind of have an idea. I believe he's gonna be in it, and I believe Toby and Andrew is gonna be in it. But once again, I don't want to set myself too high, and I don't want to know specific details. Like, if there's rumors that they're in there, if there's somewhat of evidence maybe or some leaks, cool, it's out there. I already saw it, I already heard it, but I don't need to know more than that. I don't need to know specifics, what they were doing and stuff like that. So the last thing I wanted to mention is, did you also hear that like the Runtime has you don't follow John Campea, but he basically said that someone from inside Sony told him like specific runtimes, and he said like the full runtime is 229 something, 230 basically. And the actual movie is 214 something. And that but the credits don't start until like a certain amount. Basically what he concluded did some math is that in between the end of the film and the rolling credits there's about over 4 minutes. And usually when they have those like aesthetic, like Jeremy Renner and Chris Evans, they're usually around 2 minutes. So he kind of speculated, like, does that mean we're gonna get about a 2-minute end credit scene, like just based off of the math? Now if that's true or not, I don't know, but I don't know if you heard that. I had a screenshot of it, but we're using my phone as a camera right now. So like I'll show you afterwards, and I'll put it up on the video. But what are your quick thoughts on that, man?
That's interesting. I've heard a rumor about what the post-credit scene is.
Oh shit. Okay. Don't tell me. Don't tell me.
Well, first Peter dies. No, okay. No, I've heard a rumor of, well, I don't know if it's just going to be 1 and 2, but I've heard a rumor of what the main post-credit scene is. And I don't know how, I haven't been given any sort of window on how long it is or anything like that. So it could take up that amount of time. It could not. I don't know.
It's a lot. So my question with, these leaks, these rumors, is it too much hype? Is there too much hype behind this movie? What are your thoughts on that? Like are we all going to be let down if Toby and Andrew aren't in it? If Daredevil doesn't show up? I mean, is this going to be a WandaVision, Mephisto? I'm being serious because after, I mean, you know, but like the audience doesn't really know. I was so let down by WandaVision with that finale because I fell into all that hype. I was like, for sure Mephisto was gonna be in it. I was for sure that all these things were gonna happen,
Yeah.
and ended up being nothing. And so I feel like that ruined a bit of my experience with the finale and the last few episodes of WandaVision. And from that point on, I said, all right, I'm not gonna let my expectations get so high based off of leaks and theories and this and that. So I did that to myself, right, for listening and believing those things. But I want to put it to you, man. Like, do you think that it's getting to a point where like this could be too hyped?
Yes, if the things that are being said don't pan out, yes, for sure. Well, 'cause it's funny you bring up WandaVision because that's what I was thinking about when you were getting into that subject. I think WandaVision, for the people that were, like, let's go back to WandaVision for a second. It's crazy that WandaVision came out this year because it feels like it was forever ago. But okay, go back to the beginning of the year. We were starved of Marvel content for a full year. All right,
Yeah, that's true.
we've been locked in our houses. Everybody was taking whatever scraps they can get. Every little thing they're like, "Oh, I saw Mephisto's shadow. Oh, I saw," like, they were just everything. It was spiraling, and we did kind of see that happen across the fan base. Like, I looking at forums and stuff, you saw a lot of people that were like, "Oh, Marvel let me down. They really blew their shot with this one."
Yeah.
And I do agree that if the rumors don't pan out, sure, yeah, that there might be a backlash. But at the same time, I don't know. We've seen so much that's just amazing as it is. Getting the multiverse villains like that in itself.
Yeah.
Like if there had never been rumors of other characters, we'd be feasting on that.
That's true.
So
We're spoiled.
yeah, we are spoiled, right? Now we always want more. We always want more, but I do think the hype can be a dangerous thing. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see. I'm gonna hope things pan out.
The question is it too much hype?
Yeah.
But I think that you have to split that up into expectations and like theories, right? Like,
Yeah.
just because there's a theory about something, like we said with WandaVision, oh well, this is that color and this is the shape of that, so therefore that means Daredevil's in it.
Yeah.
That versus just like, hey, you know what? Let me just go in with the expectations of what the trailer has given me,
Yeah.
of what the marketing material has given me, and separate those theories, and not let those creep into the expectations. And that's where I think I messed up with like WandaVision.
Yeah.
But I think that there's definitely something there where, man, if these guys don't show up,
Yeah.
there's gonna be a lot of like, not hate, maybe hate, but like there's gonna be a lot of upset fans,
Yeah.
and there's gonna be a lot of vitriol and a lot of, it's gonna be like Star Wars, like
Yeah.
with the last few films and Rey, like,
Yeah.
is she someone? Is she not? Like, like
Yeah.
I'm a little weary of that. So I'm really gonna try to walk in with just like
No expectation.
with the expectations of just what the trailer is giving me. So yeah, if Toby and Andrew aren't in the trailers, I'm gonna walk in expecting them not to be, and if they do show up, I want to be surprised.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like where I'm taking it.
Mm.
And I think that as fans, we owe it to the team, at
Yeah.
Marvel, to kind of give them that, because it's unfair, like, for us to kind of judge something based off of our preconceived like notions of what we thought
Yeah.
was going to be in it versus what they've been telling us is going to be in it in the
Right.
marketing material. So I don't know, that's just my opinion, man, because, man, I'm excited for this movie. I want to love it. I want to go in and just see amazing things. And they have been promising those things. But then I think us as fans, we like multiply that by 10
Yeah.
just to kind of hype ourselves up. And I'm sure in certain parts they're okay with it, because it's gonna create more buzz for the movie and it's gonna sell more tickets, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But yeah, man. So we'll see what happens. All right, man. So with all that said, we got to talk about how this movie could potentially impact the MCU, because there's a lot of stuff going on. We're talking about multiverse. We got, villains coming in from other films, other dimensions, So as far as the Sonyverse and Tom Holland, I mean, I know we've talked about this a little bit before. There's some people that think the Sonyverse is going to get crossed into, the MCU. That's why Venom is rumored to be in it. People are saying, no, Tom Holland is actually going to go over to Sony. The deal is done, but then there's other projects coming up. So what do you think that this movie can have as far as an impact on the MCU and that Sonyverse and Tom Holland? Is this Tom Holland's last movie? I know he's come out and said some comments about, if he's over 30 and he shouldn't be playing Spider-Man, but then he corrected himself. And so what are your thoughts on that? The impact on the MCU and how this will affect the Sonyverse and Tom Holland?
So I think, right, there's that big discussion of what's going to happen with Spider-Man next. I think, what they're trying to do, which in a way now I'm like kind of working against it, but I think, when it went into, going into Infinity War and Endgame, there was kind of that issue of, well, no matter what happens, we know he's coming back. We know he's got more pictures on his deal.
Right.
We knew
Right.
Far From Home was coming. And I think, Marvel's trying to get away from that now. We really don't know what Spider-Man's next appearance will be. We pretty much have always known where he would appear next. Other than like that gap where, they split up for a short little while. We've pretty much always been in the know. Okay, he's going to be in Civil War. Then he's going to have his own movie. Then he's going to have... So, some people could argue there's no suspense there because you always know the character's going to be back. Right. So I think that's kind of something that I think Marvel's taken into consideration. And that's why people are having that conversation now of like, well, we don't know where he's going to pop up next. So what's going to happen? But, recently we had some statements. I don't know if you saw this by Amy Pascal.
Yeah.
Where she was saying, no, we're working on number 4. We're working on creating a new trilogy. So... I've been of the belief, seeing the after credit scene with Venom and everything, I've been of the belief that Marvel and Sony have probably, maybe they haven't actually locked a new deal in place yet, but they probably have an idea of, okay, we're going to extend this deal. Since we're going to continue doing this, there's going to be some compromise on both ends, right? And I think we have evidence of that with freshman year coming, with, there's a deal where now the Spider-Man movies are going to be on Disney Plus. To me, that stuff wouldn't be happening if we weren't going to get a more integrated cooperation between those two companies. If it was truly, let's crank this last movie out together, and then we'll go a separate ways. I don't think they'd be doing all that. It's a lot of... It's just a lot.
There's a lot of moving parts to that, and I have to say, like, you convinced me, because we had this conversation last time we talked, and I was pretty sure that, like, this is it, man. Tom Holland's going to the Sonyverse. He's gonna have fun with Venom over there, and like, they're gonna. That's why it's called No Way Home, right? Like, he's gone from the MCU and he can't come back. But then those announcements came on Disney Plus Day, and these comments are coming out. So I do believe that. They're not going to be separating, but now the question also becomes of how much does the Sonyverse intermingle with the MCU? And Kevin Feige has made some statements where, he doesn't say it specifically, but he has mentioned something about, well, Spider-Man is one of the few characters that can cross between universes. So what does that mean? Is he going to be in a few MCU movies, and then he's going to have some Sonyverse movies? It's interesting. I think that the comments from Tom Holland about him saying, if I'm playing Spider-Man past 30, then I've done something wrong, that threw another wrench into it, because I'm like, well, okay, Tom Holland can be Spider-Man for the next 10, 15 years, right? And continue to do that, jump back and forth. But now then that came out, and then he said GQ misconstrued his comments. So I think this is one of the things that, I feel more confident about Toby and Andrew being in the movie than Tom Holland's future with Spider-Man and the MCU. So it is one of those things that I think this movie is going to answer a lot of questions and maybe still leave us with a few more, So as far as that. And then obviously we got to talk about, how this potentially could tie in with Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, Loki. And then once again, some of these crazy, crazy rumors. People at first were saying, hey, is this how they're going to introduce the X-Men? Is this how they're going to bring them through? Doctor Strange says, they're all coming through and I can't stop them, Right. And then Fantastic Four, right? They have a movie coming up, but we haven't seen anything in the MCU that shows how they're going to come in. So there's a lot of things in this that I think can impact the MCU. There's so many things up in the air that, and Loki season 2 is coming out, and we saw the end of that, and then Quantumania with Ant-Man. So I feel like there's so many possibilities. Right. I think it's kind of tough to kind of gauge. So like, what do you think? How do you think this might affect some of those different shows, movies, and do you think that there is a possibility of this is how they bring in the X-Men and this is how they bring in Fantastic Four?
I think people, kind of going back to hype and expectations, everybody, one of the issues with the MCU is, like, once you have interconnectivity between your projects, people are always like, oh, this is going to jumpstart that, or it's going to jumpstart that. I'm not going into No Way Home thinking, oh, this is going to, introduce this or that. I think, clearly we're getting some, we've been teased with the multiverse before. We were teased with it in Far From Home, and it was fake. We were teased with it with Pietro showing up in WandaVision. This is our first time really getting the multiverse. So I think, in a sense, this movie is really going to be kind of opening up the audience to that idea. We kind of got it with Loki a little bit, but this is, hey, you remember the Raimi movies? You remember, Andrew Garfield's movies? You're going to see characters from those movies, and it's going to be them. Like, it's not going to be, the same actor reprising the role. We've seen Doc Ock literally say, "You're not Peter Parker." There's another clip, I don't know if you saw, where Doctor Strange asked Doc Ock, Peter Parker in your universe, is that him? And he tells him no. So we have some direct references to these are, in fact, those characters.
Right.
And so I think this movie will help people get comfortable with seeing previous actors return in some way. Do I think that's going to be, the X-Men are going to come from another universe or not? Honestly, I'm not sure. I mean, I think we might get cameos like what's happening with No Way Home. I don't think it'll be, the X-Men are going to be from another universe and they somehow get merged with the MCU or something like that. Who knows? Maybe that is how it happens. But I think this is more just a way of getting people used to pretty much, those worlds can intermingle now. And so, like, it's getting people comfortable with the concept. Yeah. Because, there's a difference between fans like us where we keep up with things. Right. And then the general audience that, they casually watch. And to them, they're wondering, hey, where's Hugh Jackman when they watch Endgame, right? Yeah. So I think it's going to help those people get comfortable with the idea. But I'm not ready to make calls on how that's going to happen yet. Yeah. That's kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think it's a lot to ask of one movie. I mean, we're already getting so much. But to me, I just think, like, Tom Holland, just the things he's been saying, I think one of the comments that he made was, we filmed this as, like, the end of a franchise. Yeah. And so, like, that is like, wait, what? Like, so I think there's a lot behind what this movie is what kind of impact it's gonna have on the MCU. There's just so many possibilities that it's like hard to not theorize and or not speculate, I guess, but it should be interesting. So with that said, talking about the different multiverses, obviously, like we've said before, we've seen in the trailers, this is bringing in the Tobey trilogy. This is bringing the Andrew Garfield trilogy. And obviously, this is going to top off the Tom Holland trilogy. So obviously, there's going to be comparisons. There's going to be ratings, rankings. So tell me about your thoughts on each of the trilogies. And obviously, Tom Holland's we've only seen 2, but tell me what you feel about each one of them and where they how you rank them or where they stack for you right now.
Oof, that's a tough one. I mean, like, it's hard because, Tobey Maguire, there's that nostalgia factor. There's that was Spider-Man growing up, right? So I think, when you take a look at the Raimi trilogy, for its time, that was fantastic. Spider-Man 1, Spider-Man 2 are still some of the best comic book movies out there. Spider-Man 3, I know there's a lot of hate towards it. I actually really do enjoy that one. When I rewatched it recently, like, probably like a year ago, I didn't enjoy it as much as I did back then. We've kind of spoiled now. But, going back to where we were back then, I still enjoyed it a lot. Really good trilogy, kind of a weak ending. And we know now, we were supposed to get a follow-up, right? That got canceled and became the Andrew Garfield movies. So it wasn't really there wasn't a proper conclusion to it. Yeah. With Andrew's, it was kind of always rocky to begin with. Realistically, if you get down to the nitty gritty, that franchise was started off in response to Toby's movie just got canceled. Our rights expire in a couple years. We got to we got to crank something out.
Yeah.
And it's kind of sad that Andrew got placed in that position because as Spider-Man, I think he really nails the character. I love his humor. He's he nails that quippiness. There's the one scene that I always think of in particular is when he's in Amazing Spider-Man 1 where he's messing around with the car thief, and the guy pulls out a knife and he's like, "Oh, small knives,"
Yeah, so good.
I think Andrew really got robbed, and I wish that things had been different for him because I think he's a fantastic actor, and
he had so much potential as Spider-Man, and he had that scrawny build of Spider-Man.
So it's hard because like Andrew's movies, I don't necessarily love them a whole lot. I mean, Amazing Spider-Man 1, it's okay. I know Amazing Spider-Man 2 gets a lot of hate. I actually don't hate Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Oof. I despise it.
Really?
Yes.
See, it's funny because like the one thing that everybody hates, I actually enjoy. I love the fact that it's so over the top goofy.
No.
Because to me, it feels like watching a cartoon or a comic, from when I was little. Because comics are pretty goofy.
I respect it.
Yeah. Like I'm not watching Amazing Spider-Man 2 for the Oscar-winning performances. I pick and choose from each trilogy what I really enjoy. Tom, obviously, that MCU interconnectivity. None of those two other Spider-Men, they didn't get that chance, right? Mm-hmm. So it's almost unfair to compare because we get to see Spider-Man go up against Thanos. We get to see Spider-Man, steal Cap's shield with with Tom's character. So, where do I rank them all? It's hard. I think overall, I'm big on the MCU. I do, and I would say this rendition of Spider-Man is probably my favorite.
Okay.
But there's things from each one of them that I kind of pick and choose.
Okay, I mean, hey man, like I totally respect, your opinion. Like we all have different experiences with different characters.
Anyway.
No. I mean, and for real, I mean, I do. I think that's what I love about movies, that they're subjective, and you can love something and I can hate it, and or we can both hate it and we can both love it, and so that's always the fun about it, right? Yeah. For me, man, I will say that, like you said, the Tobey trilogy is just like nostalgia. Growing up as a kid, that was my Spider-Man, right? The Andrew, I mean, I'm not going to reiterate what you said, but for the most part, I agree with you. I will say that the way I would rank them, like for me, this has been tough because I've like been thinking about it for a long time, and I've like rewatched some of the movies and just had to go back, and for me, I still think the Tobey trilogy, man, is my favorite. I mean, of course it has its flaws. Of course the third one is not as great as the second one, and for the most part, the consensus is that Spider-Man 2 is one of the better comic book films, ever made. And so to me, the Tobey one just feels more like Spider-Man overall. I feel like for me it goes Tobey, Tom, and then Andrew. I agree with you that I think Andrew Garfield, really nailed down the Spider-Man, but I just did not see him as Peter Parker. He was too cool to be Peter Parker. And it sounds weird to say, but that's how it was. And not having MJ was, an interesting choice. I mean, they had Gwen, and I love that chemistry. Amazing Spider-Man 2, that was the first time that I was in a theater watching a movie going, what the hell am I watching? Like, I cannot believe this is a Spider-Man movie and I'm not having a good time. Like, that was the first time I ever experienced that. And it was one of those moments where I'll never forget, because I'm like, damn, this is Spider-Man. I love Spider-Man. And yet I'm not liking this movie at all. And, the only thing I really enjoy, I mean, oh, dude, I don't even want to talk about Electro and like the Hobgoblin and how he I mean, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole, but yeah, so even the first one, the first Amazing Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield is not memorable to me at all. It's so forgettable. Like, the only thing I remember, which is so bad, is that I remember that there's a scene where he's trying to go after a lizard and he's got to cross a city, and like all these like crane workers are like, let me line up the cranes for Spider-Man, guys. Yeah. And I'm just like, what? Like, Like, why is it that that's the thing I remember about that movie
Yeah.
and not anything else? So, you know, for me, it's just the Andrew Garfield one's a great actor, great guy. Like you said, I think he had a lot of potential, and maybe some of the things and decisions that were made didn't help him out. Emma Stone is phenomenal. I love her in a bunch of other movies. She's one of my favorite female actresses, to be honest. And it just didn't do it for me.
No, I agree.
For me though, the Tom Holland one, man, I just the more I think about it, the less he feels like a Spider-Man to me. And I cannot believe that I'm saying that, but like I feel that it's kind of counter to what you said. I think that the fact that he's integrated into the MCU has actually hurt him as a character because I see him like we have not gotten a movie, and this could have also been their decision with like not doing an origin movie.
Yeah.
We never got to see him just be Peter Parker and be Spider-Man. It's
Yeah.
always been like, oh, Iron Man needs to come do this, or I need to go do this for the Avengers. And Toby Spider-Man was more about that character.
Yeah.
We got to see him taking the trash out and talking to MJ. We got to see him, deal with the fact that he needs to go find a job and he's not getting paid enough for photography. And it felt like we spent more time with Toby, Spider-Man being Spider-Man and Peter Parker than we have ever gotten with Tom Holland just being Peter Parker. Yeah, man, I just felt like that we had more time with Toby's Spider-Man and Peter Parker, and that just really rounded out that character and those stories. I mean, we get to see him struggling with freaking rent, like, it just felt more relatable. And to me, I just feel like the Tom Holland, he's a great actor. Love the guy. I'm not saying he's done a bad job at all. I just feel like, and it could just be the nostalgia thing. Those movies are just much more rewatchable for me than even like Far From Home. I'll be honest. The more that I think about it, I don't find it to be that great of a movie. And I remember walking out of it being like, oh my god, this was great. But then I go back and I'm like,
I always thought that one was weaker.
it is weaker. I still think I find it superior to the Andrew Garfield movies, but I just feel like the fact that the integration of the MCU has kind of stunted like the character development of Tom Holland, and I feel like we haven't seen him really grow as much. I will say though, I mean, there are things that I love about it. I do love that Tom Holland's Spider-Man is a lot more modernized as far as like it's in the current generation, so as to where Toby's can seem a little dated in certain things, right? And so I do like that because it's always cool seeing Spider-Man with more gadgets and and just being reflected more to like the generation that we live in now and the times that we live in now. But the Tobey Maguire ones still hold up. And I do feel that like just having that, it kind of feels like if you really think about it, there hasn't been a Spider-Man movie where it's just him because there's that MCU connection. In the first one, it was Iron Man. In the second one, Nick Fury was kind of by his side, right, the whole time. And then in this third one, it's going to be Doctor Strange. So I feel like I haven't really been able to get to connect as much with, Tom Holland's Spider-Man. For those reasons alone. I mean, but that's not to say, like one of my favorite scenes from the first Spider-Man movie, Homecoming, is when he's like under the rubble and I loved that. That reminded me and took me back to some of the Tobey Maguire stuff where there was character development there. There was, that interaction of Tony Stark coming out of the suit and saying like, I am here. And he's like, if what's that line? He says like, if you're nothing without the suit, then you shouldn't have it. Like that is what we need. So I do like that. I like those moments where like the stakes are kind of raised and it's like a bit more serious. That I feel like we got a lot more in the Tobey Maguire movies. Aside from the Bully Maguire and all those things. But I mean, I still really like it. I do like Tom Holland as Spider-Man. I want him to continue to be Spider-Man. I don't want a new Spider-Man. I just feel like up to right now, man, and who knows, this new movie, No Way Home, can completely change my mind. It could be like the saving grace for the trilogy, and I can be like, you know what, this is the best Spider-Man trilogy. But for right now, man, it's still the Tobey Maguire ones for me. Like, even the villains are just great. Like, I mean, Green Goblin, and I'm so... Yeah, that's true. But I mean, I don't really like the current Venom. So But that's a different conversation.
I'm not a fan of that.
No,
So-
I agree with your points. I think, they were put into a hard position with the MCU Spidey, because we had literally gotten a full trilogy and then 2 movies with 2 previous Spider-Men within the last, when they announced the partnership with Sony, it literally had been within the last 15 years. There had been 5 Spider-Man movies.
Yeah.
So they were kind of locked in this position where they couldn't redo the same things. They had to differentiate it somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And realistically, the big draw with this Spidey was he is a part of the Marvel Universe. He is going to connect with these other characters. So, it's one of those situations where I don't like saying this because, we did get great movies with Tobey. I did enjoy Andrew, and now we're possibly getting all 3 of them connected. But in one universe out there, I do wish that Marvel had always had the rights, because I would have liked to have seen what would their pure Spider-Man look like.
Yeah.
Not one that's been influenced by, Sony and things like that. But to me, I don't know, I guess I'm more forgiving with the Spider-Man because of the fact that, they had to differentiate it. And 2, you're here to see this guy interact with the Avengers. So he's going to interact with the Avengers.
Yeah.
I rewatched Homecoming last night, and that's actually one of my favorite MCU movies.
Wow.
And, I think that one is peak MCU Spider-Man, I would say.
Yeah.
That one probably, kind of going back to what you were saying with the character moments, I think that one has the most character moments. And kind of going back to what I was saying with Andrew and kind of nailing the quippiness and, all of that, I think that one really did a nice job of blending those character moments, like you were saying, from the Tobey movies, and getting his humor down. When we see him stop the bank robbery and he's like, "Hey, the Avengers, what are you guys doing here?" And, he's joking around with them like, "Thor, Hulk, it's nice to meet you guys." Like, not that I had forgotten that stuff was in the movie, but rewatching it and like having it be fresh again, I was like, okay, cool. No, there's definitely those elements there that, they've definitely kind of been pushed aside for the sake of connectivity, like you were saying. But there's definitely moments there where this is like,
see,
Spider-Man we know.
I agree with you, man. I just feel like we need more of it.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't get any of that in Far From Home because he's Night Monkey, and he's like, I mean, like, I'm serious though. Like I feel like Tom Holland has the potential to be better than Tobey at being Peter Parker and at being Spider-Man. But due to the plot and the storylines that they're wanting to do with the MCU, which I understand, I'm not like blaming the MCU for ruining Spider-Man or anything like that, like, because it's great seeing him fight Thanos. It's great seeing him take Captain America's shield. It's great seeing him, deal with Tony Stark, I love those things, but it has taken away some moments that we otherwise would have had with that of him just being Peter Parker and being Spider-Man. And for me, you say that Spider-Man Homecoming is, the, what did you call it? Like quintessential or top tier?
Yeah, it's like this. It's peak.
It's peak MCU Spider-Man. For me, it was his introduction in Civil War. I thought that, like, seeing him take down Falcon and like, wow, you got a metal arm, like, like all those things. And like, to me, that was like, I'm like, when I saw it, I'm like, yes, I'm ready. Honestly, I've liked Spider-Man more in like Infinity War and in, Civil War and in Endgame, more so than I've liked him in his own movies. And not that I dislike him, but I just feel like, and that's where, okay, here's actually another thing. It could be that, like, it's the same director that's been for Spider-Man Homecoming, No Way Home, or Far From Home, and now No Way Home. What's his name? No, Mark Webb was the guy. John Watts. Mark Webb did the Andrew Garfield movies.
Yeah.
But John Watts, man, like, I don't know if it's his directing or if it's his, like, storyline or, the screenwriters, but I want somebody else to direct a Spider-Man movie. I mean, sure, but like, that's what I want. I'm still holding out hope that Tom Holland, like I said, Tom Holland can be a better Spider-Man than Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, because, we can say that Tobey Maguire was a great Peter Parker. He did that nerdy, like, kind of a loser stuff great. And his Spider-Man wasn't as quippy as Andrew Garfield's. And Andrew Garfield did a great Spider-Man where he was super quippy, and I give him that all day. But his Peter Parker to me was not nerdy or losery enough. He was too cool, to be Peter Parker. And I feel like Tom Holland has the potential to be able to do both, but I just feel like, personally, I feel like we haven't gotten it. So I feel like a change of director might be good, but when these movies make over, $1 billion, right? Like, they're not going to change the director. So, we can go on and on for hours, but, I just thought it would be interesting. And who knows what this trilogy, the end of this Tom Holland trilogy is going to bring us. And if we might get some more movies from him as well. So, all right, man. So let's kind of start to close this out, man. So as far as expectations, man. So this is the big question, man. So what are your expectations when you're walking in to go see Spider-Man No Way Home for the first time? Let's break it down a little bit because that's a huge question. So, like, for me, like, I would say, like, my expectations for this plot is things are just going to go bonkers. And, like, who knows what's going to happen, right? I mean, the trailers and the leaks, we're seeing crossovers, we're seeing multiverse, we're seeing, Doctor Strange and Iron Man butting heads and maybe fighting each other. And so, like, as far as the plot goes, I feel like this is going to be one of those movies where it's going to start out pretty simple and it's just going to mount up, and then there's going to be either a huge conclusion or it's going to lead into a bit of a cliffhanger-ish kind of ending. And what do you think that resolution could be?
The honest answer is I don't know. I mean,
Tough questions.
It's just questions. Well, if you think about it, if these other Spider-Men show up, what's going to be the rules of the multiverse?
Yeah.
How are they?
And they have to nail that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, let's talk. I mean, we don't have to get too deep into it, but I mean, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I feel like they did a great job of having the multiverse and quickly explaining it and then resolving it kind of all in one movie. So I mean, they have to lay down those rules of the multiverse that fit within Loki, that fit within this WandaVision and Doctor Strange. So that's a great point, man.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be a big one. Is nailing what the rules of the multiverse are, and I think that's the big thing. How do you resolve that when you have 5 villains from another universe pop up and potentially 2 heroes from another universe? Where do you end from there? I mean, like you were saying, we could look to Into Spider-Verse, and realistically, probably everybody will end up where they came from, or but I think that's the big thing, right? We need a satisfying conclusion to that. This is a big story. We need a satisfying conclusion to that, and then from there, we know that this is the end of the high school era of Spidey. Mm-hmm. So once that's concluded, what's next for Peter Parker? I think is the next question that you got to answer. So what step is he taking? Because he doesn't have Tony Stark. He's now dealing with literally multiversal threats. What's he going to do next? So I think that's the big thing is, they got to nail what's going to happen with the multiverse. And then whatever happens with that has to inform Peter's next stage of his life. That's what I think they got to do.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, man. And those are the things that, like, look, it's great, like, the rumors of Daredevil, the rumors of Venom, the rumors of Toby and Andrew, but at the end of the day, it's got to be a good story, man. I mean, it's got to be, I mean, you and I both, I feel like we're pretty good at, as far as like critiquing and, when it comes to storytelling and, not having a good story or not having a good plot can really ruin a movie, no matter how many amazing characters you might have. I mean, I'll be honest, like, that was one of my issues with Batman versus Superman,
I knew you were going somewhere with DC. Yeah.
So, like, I love Batman and I love Superman. This, I mean, it should have technically been a bigger movie than Civil War. Those are bigger characters, but the story and the plot just was all over the place. So, won't have to get into all that, but I agree, man. Like, at the end of the day, even if Toby and Andrew aren't in it, even if Daredevil's not in it, even if Venom is not in it, I just want a good story. Yeah. I just want a good beginning, middle, and end that makes sense, that the rules are laid out, that stuff isn't left unexplained, that we don't walk out scratching our heads, right? So that's really what I hope for, like, on a base level, and then everything else is just extra. It's just gravy, you know, like, so with that said, you know, what do you think the expectations are? What do you think will be the consensus coming out of it from a fan and a critic perspective? We just talked about Eternals not too long ago, and we saw how the fans and the critics were just completely apart on that. What do you think the expectations are going to be, or what, as far as the general consensus for this film?
I think there's probably going to be, a discrepancy between critic consensus and fan consensus, because, this is, the big thing that these trailers have been riding on is all these characters that you've met over the years through other movies are coming back. Mm-hmm. So this is, I know fan service gets used in kind of a negative light, but this movie is fan service in some ways, right?
Yeah.
So I think, when it comes to critics, they don't love movies like that. They love to say how, oh, this is a gimmick. This is not cinema. This is, know. So I think there is probably going to be some sort of divide. But it's also Marvel. Infinity War and Endgame, for what it is, critics still gave it, good reviews, or gave those good reviews. So yeah. I don't know. I think there's going to be some sort of divide. I just don't know how drastic that divide will be. I think it's going to depend on, like you said, the story. If they get the story right, you can have all that spectacle and all that fan service, and it still be, a well-received critically.
Yeah, I would say that, actually, I think maybe the one thing I would not agree with is I don't know that there's going to be that big of a divide. Like, I don't think
it's going to be Eternals level.
I was thinking Star Wars. Like there's some people that love what Star Wars did in the last movie and the last few films, and there's some people that just really don't. So, I mean, you're more of a Star Wars fan than I am, but, so I don't think it's going to be to that level, or even Eternals, I guess you could say. But I will say that I think that, like we said just previously, if the rules of the multiverse are not laid out and it's just every 5 minutes cameo, like this and that, which I doubt it, but if it's all fluff and no substance, there's going to be a divide. But I don't think that they're going to do that. I feel like there's too much riding on this movie at this point for both Marvel and for Sony that I hope that that's not it. Anything can happen. We're less than a week away, man. Like, literally, like, remember, they shot the shawarma scene, like, after the premiere. So, for all we know, they're making some final tweaks and changes. Anything can happen, man. I'm not going to put it past them. All right, man. So, speaking about expectations, we got to talk about how this movie's going to do financially. Ticket sales on opening night, or on Spider Monday, right, when the tickets released. I'm going to go first on this one because I did stay up. I decided to purchase those tickets. I was online on AMC's website in the queue for over 2 hours until I was finally able to get into, like, the choose your seat screen. And I was able to get my tickets, but a 2-hour wait. I ended up going to bed at 2:30 in the morning. Actually, no, I think 3, because they dropped at 11-ish, and I think I got my first tickets 2 hours after that, and then I got my second set of tickets like 30 minutes after that because I had to wait in another lobby. So, we're talking about hype, we're talking about expectations. Financially, it seems like this movie's going to do great box office. The ticket sales broke the websites of AMC, Fandango. All these websites crashed that night. Were you a part of that? Did you wait in line? Do you have your tickets? I can tell you that I have my first 3 showings booked. That's crazy. I don't think I've ever booked 3 showings before watching a movie. I've seen a movie 3 or 4 times, but not, like, I didn't book them all before watching them. So did you stay up for that? What was your experience getting the tickets, and how many showings have you booked?
I was going to stay up for it, and honestly, I'm not a morning person, and I worked early that Monday, so I was like, I adore you, Spider-Man, but I'm gonna be a mess and if I don't go to bed. And then I think I ended up being awake when they dropped, and then I was seeing people talking like, oh my god, these queues, and once I saw that, I was like, I'm going to bed. I'm not going to deal with no queue right now, man. Yeah, I'm not going to deal with that right now. So I was lucky enough that, like, when I checked the next day, I was able to score them without an issue at that time. I have booked 3 showings just like you. I'm hoping to book a couple more. I always do 2 showings opening night, It hasn't failed me yet. That it hasn't been that I've hated a movie or anything like that.
Right.
But I always do 2 opening night. My goal would be 2 opening night, 1 Friday, 1 Saturday, 1 Sunday. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that. It's a lot of film to digest.
Hey, I mean, I've done the marathons, so
Well,
like,
that's true.
so
Yeah.
it's possible. You can
That's
definitely do it if you want to.
Yeah.
I have Thursday night, Friday night, and Saturday night.
Yeah.
Saturday night Dolby Theater, so
I got
I'm
Dolby
excited.
for my first show.
Yes, dude, I'm so happy. I'm so
Yeah.
glad, man. Definitely recommend, guys, for you guys to check it out either in Dolby, IMAX too. I mean,
Yeah.
the queue for IMAX was crazy. So,
Yeah.
because I was in between, I was literally, dude, I had like 5 tabs open, 2
Yeah.
browsers. I had like Safari and I had Firefox.
Mm.
I had like 5 or 6 tabs in total, like open, inside different queues. Like I was all on it, man. And
That's why these websites were crashing, man, because everybody's getting all set up and everything.
dude.
Yeah.
No, and then I mean, we got to talk too. Like we saw how much they were getting sold.
Yeah.
Like there was the one booking or the one ticket sale on eBay that someone was selling tickets for opening night for 25 grand. Like obviously I don't think it got sold, but
Yeah.
like I heard that like some tickets did get sold for $500, some tickets did get sold for over $1,000. So like people were going nuts for these tickets. So I think we both think that it's going to be the highest during the pandemic era movie as far as opening weekend. Do you think this movie can break $1 billion during the pandemic era
That's a tough
in
question,
its
man.
total run?
In its total run.
If you had asked me this even a month ago, I probably would have told you no.
Right.
Because we've seen some movies do okay, like Shang-Chi, Black Widow. They did okay.
007?
I don't pay attention to
But yeah.
No, but that movie
It
is,
did
I
okay.
think, the closest one that has got, because it's
Yeah.
worldwide. In
Yeah.
other territories, it's done a lot better.
No, for sure.
I think it was at like 700, 800 million.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's why I'm like, it's getting close, man.
So it's interesting because if even just going back a couple months ago, I probably would have told you no way. Because I saw online a lot of people were confident like this is going to be the movie to bring theaters back, and I thought especially like the way things are around here, like where we're at, we still got to wear masks. My thought process at that point in time was like it'll do good, but it's not breaking any records.
Okay.
Maybe it'll break the best COVID, release record. I think it's always it always had that. But I thought like it's not gonna do anything crazy. Then like trailer numbers, have come out for the first trailer, for the second trailer, and
all this social media hype.
all the hype.
Yeah.
And I feel like everybody and their mother's talking about Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So like now, I don't know, man. I think it'll cross $1 billion. I'm gonna be bold and say it'll do it.
Okay.
I just don't know if it'll have legs, like if it'll continue to hold like after release, because right now everybody's trying to get in opening night because they want to see Toby, they want to see Andrew, they want to
spoilers. Yeah, they want to avoid that. Yeah,
I think it's gonna have a hard time once it's already out there, because I think that's kind of what we've been seeing in the COVID era.
So you're saying, I think what you're trying to say is that like it's gonna have a huge maybe first, second week, and then it's gonna fizzle out pretty quickly. And so, like, if it doesn't make it's 1 billion in that chunk, it's going to be harder for it to.
I think it'll be harder for sure over time, because I think that's kind of what we've been seeing with this COVID era. It's just there's a huge drop off rate.
And I think to kind of piggyback on what you're saying, there is the rewatchability of this movie is gonna be a huge factor into whether it makes $1 billion. I will say this: I do think that this will be the movie that brings theaters back, and what I mean by that is there were some people that said Shang-Chi is going to be my first movie back in the theaters. Some people said 007 is going to be my first movie. For some people it was Dune. I think that Spider-Man is going to be that movie that gets those people that still haven't had their first viewing back since the pandemic. So in that sense, I think it's going to bring the movie theaters back. It's going to be the movie that convinces that last percentage. I don't really know what the numbers are. I think I saw a report the other day that said that 50% of the movie fans aren't back yet. Like the people that used to go to the movies, like the numbers are like cut in half. Okay. So that was like a week or two ago. So I think that this is the movie that's gonna be the biggest chunk of that 50 that's gonna start coming back. Yeah. So that's why I think that it does. That's why I'm optimistic that it will make $1 billion, is because I think that it will be the movie that people come back for. But whether it is able to get to that billion is also gonna be determined by the rewatchability and the reception of it. And so I think that it has a very good chance. I think that out of all the movies that have come out, it's the one that has the best chance to break a billion. But at the end of the day, I think it's gonna come down to how good the movie is. I mean, it could literally be a movie that gets to 900 million. And then you're like, but because it wasn't as rewatchable, or there was some issues with it, or it divided the fan community, then like, I don't want to put numbers out there, but like, it's gonna at least make like 700 million or like 800 million.
The other big thing we got to take into consideration too is China. And that's been a huge problem for Disney since the pandemic rolled out. You know, we have not had an MCU movie released in China so far.
Right.
And, you know, a lot of people were saying, okay, Spider-Man's going to be the first one to premiere out there. And even right now, last I saw, that's still in flux. You know, they don't know what's going to happen with it. That's a huge market. It really is. You know, so we'll have to see how that comes into play. Like if they're able to get a release out there and it's timely, you know, that's going to bring in numbers.
Yeah, but I'm confident that it's going to do well. I think that the fact that it crashed websites and it kind of had that like Endgame Infinity War effect based on the pre-sales and everything and the hype, I think it's going to do very well. And I'm pretty confident that I think it will break that billion. Okay, man. So let's just wrap up, this, pre-release discussion on No Way Home, man. At the end of the day, man, when you walk out of the theater, how do you think you're gonna feel?
I don't know if I'll even know that day. I think I'm gonna need time to process it. To be honest with you, this is like we've said. This is the next Endgame. This is the next big event. I think it's gonna take time to digest it and
process everything.
Yeah, I think I'll be overwhelmed. I think it's going to be a good time. Yeah, I'm hoping to be overwhelmed. I think it's going to be a great time. Regardless of rumors, what pans out to be, I love what we've seen so far. So even without all that, if they deliver on the movie that they've been showing in the trailers, I'm going to love it.
Yeah, and I think that's the one thing, for me, for you, for the fans out there, like, is just go in with a level head, an open mind of like, I mean, you don't have to be like me where I'm just going based off the trailers, but I feel like we should at least give the movie a fair shot as far as like not putting too many expectations on it. Even though, I mean, sometimes you just can't avoid it, right? Yeah. But I think walking out of it, I am hoping that I will walk out saying, wow, that was the best Spider-Man movie, Tom Holland Spider-Man movie we've gotten, and that I have a better idea of where the MCU is going. Yeah. I feel like this movie is going to answer a lot of our questions, and I hope that the answers are something that we can be excited for. Like that the answers are something that we're looking forward to now, the next, whatever it's going to be for Marvel, whether it's their Disney Plus shows, whether it's their movies. Like, I just want to walk out of it feeling that I got some questions answered and that I'm excited for what those answers hold for the future. So, man. So that about wraps it up for us here. I'm excited. We hope you guys are excited for Spider-Man No Way Home. Hopefully we will see you guys in our next breakdown, the real breakdown on whatever it is to come next. Who knows? It might be Spider-Man No Way Home. It might be so crazy that we might have to come back and do another conversation. So, and thank you guys for tuning in for this special pre-release discussion on Spider-Man No Way Home. And until next time, see ya.